Everyone is so weirdly emotional when it comes to their diet. You've got the calories in, calories out people, and you've got the I just want to eat what I like people. You've got the vegans. We don't even need to talk about the vegans. Now you've got the carnivore people as well, which this video is kind of partly about, and you've got the keto people, and just tons of like almost religious cults when it comes to diet. I'm here purely to talk about what I think is the optimal human diet, and I'm not necessarily saying it is carnivore. The most optimal human diet, and I think most of you can agree with this, includes these three things. Firstly, you have to remove all processed junk, which most people will still have in their diets. Secondly, you want to eat the most nutrient-dense foods that also have the least amount of toxins and anti-nutrients. And lastly, the food needs to be pretty bioavailable. What's the point of eating food that your body can't absorb and make the most out of? These 3 points, I think, summarize what an optimal human diet is, and I'm pretty sure everyone will agree with this. I do believe that the carnivore diet has these qualities, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. I tried the carnivore diet for 30 days, starting on the 1st of February. But before we talk about that, what actually is a carnivore diet for any of you out there who don't know yet? A carnivore diet is pretty basic. It's simply just animal products minus honey, if you include that as, you know, an animal product. So that means meat, fish, organs, eggs, bone marrow, blood, and some people include dairy. Personally, I'm really not a fan of the name, the carnivore diet. I don't know if you guys are anything like me, but when you hear about carnivore, you think of a lion. And the difference between people and a lion is that a lion quite literally just eats meat, and he has the digestive system to pretty much only support meat. Whilst if I feed you a ton of fruit, you're not gonna die. If I feed you processed garbage, you're not gonna die. Is it optimal? No, it's not. Some of it I wouldn't even consider food, but that doesn't mean that you can't eat it. To me, carnivore is an animal who can pretty much only just eat meat. So maybe I'm wrong with that definition, but I prefer the term ultra low carb, or maybe even zero carb. I think that fits the diet better. It's definitely not as catchy, and right now the carnivore name is trending, so I'm just gonna keep going with that. On my 30 days of eating carnivore, I ate meat as the number one thing. I would go to the butcher once a week and I'd get a hefty amount of meat. I also ate fish. I now live in Portugal, and we have this really cool thing where we have a local fish man. He literally drives early in the morning to the shore to collect freshly caught fish from the fishermen. Then he brings it back to the village, and if you want, he can drive past your house and you can pick from the daily selection. Eggs. I do buy some eggs from the store. I always try to get the best quality eggs I can. However, I also have my auntie who always supplies me with a nice amount of eggs from her backyard. She literally has chickens running around eating worms and grass and whatever else chickens eat in the wild. So these eggs are pretty nice, they're pretty high quality. I always ask for bones when I'm at the butcher. They're completely free. They usually throw them away anyways, and I use them to make bone broth, and it's delicious. I also was eating liver almost every single day for breakfast along with eggs. Also, I had heart a few times here and there, and everything I ate was cooked in either lard or butter. But most importantly, how did I actually feel? And let's start with the negatives of my 30 days of carnivore. The adjustment period was kind of tough, man. I didn't sleep very well for the first week at all. I felt too awake in my brain, and I recognized this from back in the day when I was doing keto. I had the same exact thing. Also, my first week was spent in the bathroom. I was just shitting out water constantly for the first week. Every time you change your diet quite drastically, it's gonna happen. You're gonna have an adjustment period. And after the first week, it all cleared up and I felt fine. Another downside I had was that I was deflated. I haven't been going to the gym recently. I do actually want to make a video about exercise in the near future. I felt my muscles were quite deflated as opposed to when I was eating carbs. It can be expensive depending on your current diet. Here's a little riddle for you. I'm going to tell you the riddle. You're going to pause the video. You're going to leave a comment telling me what you think the answer is. And then you're going to come back and listen to the answer. Don't cheat. I'm watching, don't cheat. What is the most precious treasure that cannot be bought with wealth, yet enriches every moment of life? Okay, have you written the answer? No cheating? The answer is health. It may be a slightly more expensive diet, but I'm telling you, health is probably one of the best investments you can make. And so there are a few non-negotiables for me when it comes to where I spend my money. You know, I can save money on this and that and the other, but I really avoid going cheap when it comes to my health, and food is probably number one. Having said that, if you are on a budget, I think 2 recommendations I have for you to eat more of, which is way cheaper. Mince meat is great. It's usually a lot cheaper than, you know, full cuts of meat. So I'd recommend mince. And also liver. Liver has to be one of the most nutrient dense foods per pound, as in not pound of food, but like pound as in money, euros, dollars, wherever you're from. It has to be one of the most nutrient dense foods per dollar. It's really great. For me, I actually think I ended up spending less money. I did definitely spend more money on meat, but I already ate a pretty meat heavy diet anyways. I increased the meat a little bit, but I got rid of everything else that I was spending money on. It ended up being net cheaper than what I was spending before. And for context, I was eating like 95% like paleo whole foods beforehand. For a lot of you, I can understand that it might be more expensive, but I think it's worth it. You will probably increase the amount of cooking that you do. Instead of like opening a packet of crisps and just eating it when you're feeling like a snack, you can't really do that with a steak or a bit of liver or some eggs. So you will likely want to cook a lot more than you currently do. In my case, I have an amazing girlfriend who sorted me out, but I can understand that this might be annoying. Socially, it is tough. You end up just picking steak everywhere you go, and some places you just can't. Like for example, in Portugal, you have these pastelarias. They sell like pastel de nata cakes and croissants and all this stuff. They don't really have any options whatsoever for somebody who's on carnivore. You just wouldn't go to a place like that on carnivore unless you're happy not having anything. So socially, it can be tough if you want to be a strict carnivore. A lot of people criticize carnivore saying, oh, what about the vitamin C? Aren't you going to get scurvy if you don't eat vitamin C? And I have to admit, I did crave oranges. Now, do I think it's because I was deficient in vitamin C? I'm not too sure, to be honest. Like, I can't say for sure. However, I do think it might be a coincidence. During that time, the season for oranges was going strong. And in my garden, I have like 5 orange trees, and they looked so good because they were ripe and ready, and my girlfriend was eating so many oranges in front of me. So that is likely the reason why I was really craving oranges, but I thought it was interesting. I want to point out that liver, which is something I was eating a lot of, has vitamin C. So it's unlikely that that was the reason, but it is interesting. But that pretty much wraps up my cons. Let's go on to the pros. It is the easiest, most simple diet that you can imagine. Oh, what do I want to eat for dinner today? Oh, you know, maybe I'll have some chicken breast with some lettuce and some salad or whatever, and some rice, and then maybe I'll have a dessert. And no, none of that. It literally is as simple as, okay, today I want steak, tomorrow I want pork, the next day I want chicken, and then I want steak again. Maybe every day I want eggs for breakfast. Like, it is so easy. It's not complicated at all. You don't have this like problem of choice. You know, when you have too much choice, you can't even make a decision. That's not a thing with carnivore. It's very, very simple. And, you know, the food preparation is also very simple. Instead of starting mains and sides, etc., you just cook one main and you're done. Simplicity of this diet is 10 out of 10. There's no easier diet out there. If you're anything like me, it's very easy for you to overeat a food that's highly palatable. I love steak. It's probably my favorite food ever. So I was eating steak, without exaggeration, like 4 times a week minimum. Every single day I'd put a bite of steak into my mouth and it'd like, it's so good, right? As I ate more and more steak, it would gradually taste less and less and less good. I've got a steak in my plate and I finished the whole steak. I just do not want more. And I feel satisfied. I feel great. The next day, I want steak again, and I eat it until I don't want more. And that's great. With like highly palatable foods like pizza or pasta, I will eat until I've finished everything. Even if I've been full for like 20 minutes, I will continue eating. I don't know why, I just have no control when it comes to highly palatable foods and carbs. But when it comes to meat, I eat just the right amount and I feel super satiated and I feel great. Let me tell you, I have never felt so unbloated in my life. This is the least inflammatory diet I have ever tried by far. I have always had stomach issues, constipation, might be too much information, but I remember being very young, my mother taking me to the doctors because I couldn't use the bathroom properly. Yeah, stomach issues have plagued me my whole life. And so I have done standard diet, I've done keto diet for 3 years, which really taught me so much about my body. And then most recently I was on like a 95% paleo. And I say 95% because it really was like mostly whole foods, but then I'd have the occasional thing that wasn't. So I'd call it 95% paleo. Nothing compares to this diet. The closest diet to carnivore for how unbloated I was keto. But even during keto, I was still eating like a lot of broccoli and these other things that just bloated me. So I don't know. This diet was perfect when it comes to bloat. Here's a weird one. Poop. I just barely ever pooped. And now that kind of clashes with what I said before about being unbloated, except it doesn't. It makes it sound like I was constipated, but I wasn't. I'd poop like maybe once every 4 days. I'm eating a 0 fiber diet and I'm pooping fine every 4 days, no bloating, no anything. One thing I've learned is that fiber is just the non-digestible part of the food. So if you're eating a lot of fiber, you're basically eating a lot of food that you can't digest. Eating 0 fiber did not mean that I was not able to go to the toilet. It just meant that I had less to go to the toilet for. I would absorb pretty much everything I ate to the point where I only needed to go like once every 4 days. And the best part is, you go once every 4 days after not feeling even a tiny bit bloated and you wipe, the ghost wipe. You have to wipe twice just to check because you're like, how is there nothing there? I know that sounds disgusting, but I've never had a ghost wipe before. It's crazy. I'm pretty sure that is exactly how poop is meant to be. You poop when you really need to. Why do we need to poop every day? If your body's absorbing all your food, what is there to poop? So once every 4 days, I was pooping and there was nothing to wipe. I would wipe, but it was a ghost. Nothing there. Great. Let's move on from the poop. My mental clarity. That was my favorite thing about back in the day when I was doing keto. I just felt sharp all the time, never cloudy. If you give me a bowl of oats, I feel more stoned than if you just make me smoke a big zoot. I swear to you, I feel like completely zonked out. With this diet though, my mental clarity, I'm sharp as I can be. My brain reaches maximum capacity. And then my general mood and energy. You would think that without carbs, you have no energy, but I had a good amount of energy. I wasn't working out, which is something I do want to mention, but for my day-to-day, I felt great. And my general mood was also very good. That was my experience for the 30 days in February. Have I kept doing carnivore since then? And the answer is not really, but kind of. I'm not doing strict carnivore anymore. It's more like a cyclical carnivore, I guess you could call it, but it's very intuitive. I'm not really following a strict pattern. I'm listening to my body more than I ever have. So here's what I currently eat. I currently eat meat, mainly red meat. I've noticed after the 1 month of carnivore that I like all meat and I feel good on all meat, but I feel best on red meat. So I eat maybe 4 or 5 days out of the week, I'll eat red meat, and 2 days of the week, I'll eat some other type of meat. I eat fish, and that would probably fall into one of the 2 days when I'm not eating red meat. I eat dairy now. However, I don't eat most dairy. I only eat raw cheeses, such as Parmesan, and also butter. Eggs, like I said, I still eat local eggs from my auntie. They're great. Bone broth, still eat bone broth. I still cook with lard and butter. I still eat organs, livers, consistently a part of my breakfast. And now I also eat fruit. Although I'm still learning which fruit works well with my body and which one doesn't. My favorite 5 fruits right now are oranges, melon, bananas, organic raspberries, because otherwise they probably have a ton of pesticides, and dates. I really like those fruits. I've eaten more fruit than this, but I've noticed that I haven't reacted the best with all of it. For example, apples bloat me a little bit. Pineapples also kind of mess me up a bit. I don't eat all fruits, but these fruits have felt pretty safe. I very occasionally now eat raw, glyphosate-free honey, and I very occasionally have coffee, and once in a blue moon, I have anything I want. To summarize, I eat carnivore every day. Maybe I'll add fruit a couple times a week. Honey and coffee, I might have like twice every other week. And whatever I want, maybe like once a month or even less. That highly depends on what I'm doing socially. One thing I learned is that this is about health. It's not about joining a cult or a religion. And I really do think that a healthy balance for me to enjoy my life as well is that if I find I'm doing something socially and it's going to be worth it, then I will break my healthy eating for like a meal. I've made that rule for myself. If it's worth it, I will do it. Because I did this in February, it landed on Valentine's Day, 14th of February, and we ended up having to go to a steakhouse, which, by the way, I loved. I loved it. It was really, really great. And we don't often go to like steakhouses when we were eating out at restaurants before. So it was fine. But I don't want it to end up being a thing where I can only ever go to a steakhouse. I'll give you an example of where I broke my carnivore. I did this kind of like survival camping thing with my friends not long ago. My boys wanted to make like bread on like a rock in a campfire. And so I was like, yeah, why not? I'll try it. Is it good for me? Of course not. But I'm not going to be religious about this. I wanted to just experience the wild camping with my boys. I'm not going to make a big scene out of it. I'll enjoy that moment and then go back home and eat normal. It's fine. If you're not used to really controlling what you eat, including carbs again, fruit is an easy gateway to just eating anything again. So I would definitely be careful. I'd do carnivore for a bit longer until you've quite literally kill the addiction to carbs, which is really hard to do. Okay, so here's some bonus tips for you guys. These are somewhat to do with the carnivore diet, but they're things that I've recently learned about food and diet in general. Cook your food less. Anytime you cook any type of food, it breaks down the foods, and this can reduce and denature nutrients, as well as get rid of like water-soluble vitamins. I'm not gonna lie, there are some foods that I just cannot eat if I cook them a lot. I'll give you an example. Liver is something I've been eating a lot recently. I grew up my whole life saying liver's the only food I don't like. That's because my mom used to cook it a lot. If you don't cook liver a lot, if you keep it like borderline raw, inside it's like sweet. It tastes nice. It's genuinely good. Taste-wise, if you cook your food less, often it's actually surprisingly good. I do the same with steak. I used to eat it medium rare. Now I eat it like as rare as I can. You'd be surprised how good food is for hydration when you don't cook it. Blood in meat is very hydrating. It's super hydrating. Seasoning is overrated on high quality whole foods. Yeah, that's controversial, especially for you guys out there who are like from cultures where you heavily season your food. I grew up in Britain. I always used to judge like English people for not seasoning their food. Like, oh, it's so bland, it's so bland. And now here I am, basically only seasoning my food with salt. If you have really, really high quality food, you don't need to mask the flavor. Your body just knows it's delicious. Your taste buds get adjusted to like really finding the complexity of like simple food that's high quality. Fat is the main reason why your food tastes good anyways. So don't be scared of like cooking your food with fat. That's what's going to make it tasty. Like if you're going to put the chicken wings in the oven, make sure it has a nice amount of like fat on it, because then it'll become crispy and delicious. Did you add any seasoning? Maybe a little bit of salt, but it's the fat that makes it taste good. When you eat only meat, you can also just tell the difference between like cravings and hunger. Because if your body tells you you want more food, but then you don't want more meat, it's not real hunger, it's a craving. If you were hungry, you would want more meat. A side effect of this diet is that you'll probably lose a bit of body fat. I noticed that I did, especially when I was doing like strict carnivore, but you probably won't lose muscles. However, they will look smaller. Like my muscles definitely look smaller, and that changes the second that you eat carbs again. You puff up and your muscles fill out again. But I would say that on average, I've retained muscle really, really well, even though I haven't been working out. Unless you already have some deficiencies, you don't need to supplement on anything. This diet already covers you with literally every nutrient that you need. Similarly, fasting has become really popular nowadays, and fasting I think is only really beneficial to those who already have suboptimal diets. If you're eating carnivore, it's already kind of like fasting. It's fasting mimicking because you're running off of ketones, so you're burning fat. That's basically what fasting does. Also, the mental effects of fasting are the same when you're on carnivore. So fasting isn't really necessary when you're on carnivore. I'm not going to go into this one too deeply, but pasteurized dairy has a lot of negatives. If you're going to eat any dairy, try to find raw dairy or just remove it entirely. I think butter is the one exception to this because it's quite literally just the fat, none of the lactose or any of the extra stuff that you'd find in dairy. Coffee and tea aren't great either. I'm a big fan of coffee, so I still drink it every once in a while, but I gotta be honest, not only is it addictive like a drug, so if you can stop drinking coffee, that's probably going to help you. But also, if you really think about what coffee actually is, it's just concentrated toxin water. This has been a long ass video. Let's summarize really quick. The most optimal human diet removes all processed garbage, includes foods that are the most nutrient dense with the least amount of toxins and anti-nutrients. You may have noticed I didn't include vegetables in any of this. Why? Because vegetables have a lot of phytotoxins. I really felt the difference in between keto and zero carb. I did keto for 3 years and I felt great. However, it wasn't perfect. If I had known what I know today, I probably would have spent those 3 years doing zero carb because the vegetables I was still eating, the broccoli, etc., was not doing me any good, and I was purely eating it because I thought it was really healthy. What are some of these phytotoxins I'm talking about? I'm going to struggle to pronounce these, but we've got isothiocyanates, oxalates, lectins and glutens, phytic acid, and of course pesticides. Meat can also have steroids, and that's not ideal, so if you can buy higher quality meat, that's great. But also it's a bit weird that some foods even require cooking and breaking down to even be eaten. Like for example, I used to eat broccoli all the time on keto, but if you think about it, you couldn't really eat broccoli raw. Not only would it taste horrible, but also it would really mess with your gut. When it comes to meat, I mean, have you heard of beef tartare? You can absolutely eat meat raw. Of course, there's the whole question of like parasites, and that's why we do cook meat, but I try to eat it as raw as possible anyways. Not all calories you ingest are equally bioavailable, but meat is highly bioavailable. You know, when a lot of vegans will tell you that there's this nutrient in this vegetable and this nutrient in this fruit, this all may be true, but how bioavailable is it for you? The same as when like gym bros tell you calories in, calories out. Not necessarily true, because just because a calorie is a calorie doesn't mean the same calorie is going to give you the same amount of nutrients absorbed. If you're eating protein from a protein bar versus protein from a chicken breast, which one's actually going to give you more protein? I personally would recommend that everyone tries the carnivore diet, or at least a ketogenic diet, for minimum of like 3 months. This will be one of the healthiest things you can do. Learn so much about your body, especially when 90% of your diet is probably processed garbage and not even real food. Learn about your body, get healthy.